Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of No Such Thing as a Fish. Anna Toshinsky is still off on her hollybobs, and so we have for you a very, very special guest. It is Melanie Bracewell. Now, those of you down under will know who Melanie is. She is a regular on television in Australia and New Zealand. She's recently been on New Zealand Taskmaster, if anyone outside of New Zealand has naughtily managed to get hold of that on the tubes. And then you'll know her from that. But we've actually known Mel for many, many years. We first met her when we did our New Zealand tour many years ago. We've been wanting to get her on the podcast for ages and ages, and finally she is in the UK and she came on the show. And actually that brings me to the fact that she is touring the UK at the moment. So if you listen to this podcast, you like what you hear, I know you will, because she's absolutely brilliant, she's so funny, then definitely get down to one of her gigs. You'll have to get in there fast because she is already right in the middle of that tour. But if you listen to this as soon as it comes out, then you just about have enough time to get to her gigs in Stafford, Edinburgh, Glasgow, London, Cambridge and Birmingham. That's all happening in the next week or so. And of course, if you are in Australia or New Zealand, then she's doing loads of gigs down there. And actually in the UK, she'll be back to do the Edinburgh Festival in the summer. So if you want to know any more about Melanie, go to melaniebracewell.com. And if you want to know where she's playing, then go to melaniebracewell.com/gigs. Really hope you enjoy the show. I'm absolutely certain you will. So let's just say on with the podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast coming to you from the QI offices in Holborn. My name is Dan Schreiber. I am sitting here with Andrew Hunter-Murray, James Harkin, and Melanie Bracewell. And once again, we have gathered round the microphones with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days. And in no particular order, here we go. Starting with fact number 1, that is Mel.
Yes, my fact this week is that a study of magpies in Australia has revealed that magpies do not like to be studied. So this was a study that they did at the University of the Sunshine Coast. They were trying to track flight patterns and things of magpies. They developed these very special trackers that were only 1% of a magpie's body weight. They're like, this is perfect. And they put these trackers on the birds and they quickly just started pecking them away. And they went, oh, they're not being very successful. It'll be okay. And then the other magpies came and just helped them pick the trackers off of them. So at first they were sort of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and they were picking them off each other. But then they found that other magpies who didn't even have a tracker in the first place were helping the other magpies to get rid of their trackers. So they were showing behaviours of like altruism. And so they were like, actually, this is quite a good study.
So that's how they know. I was hoping they decoded like some calls of theirs and they'll translate as piss off, mate.
Probably.
Yeah.
Actually, 1% of your body weight would be almost a kilo.
What are my clothes? What do my clothes weigh? I don't know.
Let's weigh your clothes now.
No, let's not take them all off now and weigh them.
But you do have a good point, because magpies do have a reputation for being dicks. They, but falsely. So basically, only 8 to 10% of magpies will swoop people. Only the male magpies, and only in 1 month of the year.
Hashtag not all magpies.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is a really interesting thing, because magpies are over on this side of the planet as well, but Aussie magpies, they're actually a different species to the European magpie. That's just not anything to do with each other. So I remember saying to people, oh, magpie swoop, and that being an alien concept here. But you live in Australia, you know the danger, the fear of walking down a street and a magpie swooping on you.
And the problem is because they're very smart and they recognize faces, if they decide that they don't like you, they will target you. So some people will just get swooped every day on their way to work. And so that's why they've earned that reputation.
Have you been swooped?
I have been swooped once in my life, but my boyfriend loves birds a lot, and he has decided when we first moved to Australia he was going to become friends with all the magpies. And so that's the other thing, because they can recognise your face, you can actually make a friend for life.
Yeah.
And they stay in the same neighbourhood. So if you move into a neighbourhood and there are magpies there, they will be the same magpies for like 20 years.
It's really high stakes
Yeah,
when you
really
move in.
is.
So you've got a chance to make a good impression, and if you blow it,
Long-term grudges are held.
I know what you
like
mean,
neighbours,
but they
yeah.
only usually live for about 5 years.
can't the family, like in the mafia, remember and bear a grudge? Didn't we save ages? I mean, that was crows we were talking about ages and ages ago, I think. Crows bear a grudge.
Yeah.
They
Right,
do,
right.
yes. And school children are often targeted by magpies because they often wear school uniforms. So if one child has thrown a rock at a magpie, they will then view all children
Yeah.
as threats. And so they'll just attack.
harsh.
Same with like if they determine if you're wearing like something covering your face or your head, say a bike helmet, they view that as a threat of like, what are you hiding from? And then they will then swoop you for that.
Yeah.
Has anyone come across Emma Glenfield when you're doing this research?
No.
So we were talking about school kids. She was in Australia and she'd been watching people be swooped by these magpies. And she thought, it seems to me like they're going for bold people more. The bold teachers, they seem to be going for the bold teachers. And she asked her mum, is this a thing? And her mum said, well, I don't know if it's a thing, do your homework or whatever.
Yeah.
And anyway, she decided to do a study. So she went to her school and she watched as these magpies swooped people and then did a survey of anyone who'd been swooped saying, how tall are you? What's your hairstyle? What sex are you? All that kind of stuff.
What's your hairstyle? None.
Well, then she spoke to about 100 people around the school, but then it went online and she got 30,000 people to participate on her survey online. And she found that statistically, magpies are more likely to go for bold people. And according to a magpie expert called Daryl Jones, her study is the first time anyone's ever examined this link. And so she's doing brand new science and learned this about people.
So you know what bold people should do then? Draw a face on the back of their head.
What?
Magpies are less likely to go at anything that has eyes, and so if they're swooping from behind, they're just seeing a bald head altogether.
I see. Oh, that could be. I
Yeah.
see.
So
yeah.
there are a few things that people think they've worked out that magpies won't swoop at. One is if you have eyes at the back of your head. So cyclists might often wear sunglasses on the
nice.
back of their head,
That's
facing that way
clever.
to give the impression there are eyes there.
A bit like is it in Africa? We might have said before where they draw eyes on the bums of cows.
Yes,
to stop
exactly.
them being attacked by lions.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like that.
because you can't be sneaked up on.
Yeah. It's so funny. They're a protected national species. So if a magpie attacks you, you can't attack it back. You kind of just have to let it happen.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And so what they do then is if they've identified an aggressive magpie, they have to ship him out of there. But there's a minimum distance, which is like 25 kilometers or so, because they'll just fly back.
They don't respect the restraining order.
Exactly.
Have you heard of the Windsor Road monster?
No.
It's an Australian magpie, specific one, which was especially aggressive and had to be put down in the end. But it took a very long time. I have to say, the Windsor Road monster was given multiple chances to learn and change. And it attacked. Well, there were more than 40 complaints. One person had a heart attack shortly after being swooped, which is not the fault.
There could be other things happening in that person's life that makes them more susceptible to a heart attack. It's not necessarily the
That's
magpie's
true.
fault.
That's true. But it did. No, you're right. But it was going for people's faces. It was going under cyclists' helmets to get them. It was even for an Australian magpie. It was being especially aggressive.
You're bold under there, mate? What's going on? Where are you hiding?
They're just trying to protect their ground. They spend most of their life just protecting their area.
Yeah.
So they choose their radius, and it's quite small, and they will just spend the whole time just standing like as bouncers on the edge of their patch, being like, don't come in here, all the time.
There was one cyclist who I read about called Dr. Richard Osborne, who came up with this new cycle helmet.
I think I've seen this.
Does it have a face on it?
No, it doesn't have a face.
that's
Can
a
you
shame.
guess what it is? He uses a thing I have around my house to scare them away.
So I know this, so I won't guess.
Yeah, okay. Mel's
I
out.
could have seemed really
It's
smart.
tough using James's personality to work out.
Well,
A golf club.
Yeah.
what do you know about things that happened in my life in the last 2 weeks?
In the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Weeks.
All my family members.
Your kid has had a birthday.
Correct. Yeah.
Your daughter
my
is
God.
2 years old.
Yeah.
So you see, you put the hours in with people,
What
Dan.
a- what a-
and it yields dividends.
What a way to find out that's your daughter's birthday.
Oh no, Uncle Dan hasn't forgotten about you. No, he's been very busy. I'm sure the gift's on its way.
Oh my god.
She built a helmet to ward Dan away, I think. Yeah.
And does the bike have a model baby pinioned on top of it?
No,
or a
it
doll?
It has, these party blowers where you blow them and they go, and they kind of stick out. He has those attached to his helmet, and there's a tube attached to them, so that whenever a magpie comes near, he blows into the tube, and they all go.
Is this what you were thinking about?
No! I just seen a guy who had tied a lot of cable ties to his head.
That's very funny.
And has it sort of caught on?
Well, no, it's not caught on because he looks like an idiot. But he said it seemed a bit safer than carrying a stick and waving it around, which was his other option.
Or having spikes, which a lot of people do. They're not sharp spikes, but they are sticky out.
Is that right?
Yeah. Just as a deterrent.
The best thing to do is to just be nice to them.
Yeah.
Because they will remember you being nice. So what happens is people run away and they go, oh, you are guilty. Why are you running? Therefore, it just fills this prophecy in their head.
But to be nice to, if you're in their area,
So
how can you be nice?
You just feed them. You just leave them out like little peanuts and things. That's what my boyfriend has been trying to do, like leaving peanuts outside our yard and getting them to come. And yes, and then when they like you, they'll bring their kids along to be like, here's my kids. You missed their birthday.
But one nice thing that you can do for them is actually something that will get you in trouble with them, which is if you see one of their babies struggling and you go to help it, they will view that as you hurting their babies because they haven't introduced you to it. So be careful how nice you are.
And that's why you didn't give a gift. It might have been viewed as a threat.
But that's in playgrounds are like that, you know.
Are they?
Well, if you see a child that's struggling and you go over to help it, their parents might think, who's this guy who's approaching my child?
Yes. Yeah. This guy has left the fence.
I can't remember not to wear my costume when I'm doing that. So,
I'm weighing my clothes.
do you have lots of superstitions about them, Mel, in Australia?
I have heard of these superstitions, but I don't think I follow them in my day-to-day life.
Because that's pretty much what they're well known for here, right?
Yeah.
I follow quite a few.
Oh,
So
wow.
do you, when you see one, do you say like, hello, Mr. Magpie, where's your wife or something?
It's good morning, my lord, and how's your wife and children? Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you do that?
I do.
Yeah.
If you see one on its own, seeing two is fine, three is fine, whatever. But one on its own, bad luck. So you just quickly,
Because in Australia, that's a lot to get out while it's coming for your eyes, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Australia, that's it. Yeah, that's what they're saying. Yeah, but no, there are all these things like the magpie landed on the cross when Christ was being crucified. Or the tongue of a magpie contains a drop of blood from the devil himself.
I think if they open their mouth, there is a little bit of red in there, isn't there? I think that's why they associated with
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's why if you scratch its tongue with the edge of a silver sixpence and put a drop of blood into the wound, it will gain the power of speech.
It's really,
We've all been there.
yeah. There's so much slander about them from back in the day, particularly religious. So the one about the crucifix, apparently it was the only bird not to cry when Jesus was crucified.
Wow.
And that was big news. And then in the 19th century, there was a vicar who said it was the only bird that refused to go on Noah's Ark. Rather, it just wanted, it hung outside swearing instead. In France, the idea is that a magpie is a reincarnated evil nun.
I can see it, I guess.
British magpies eat a lot of dog poo.
Well, that's good.
Wow.
Yeah. Even if there's other food around, they'll eat the dog poo.
Really?
Yeah. And to such the extent that people in parks have noticed that because they're quite smart, obviously, magpies, they'll go to the dog poo bins, pull out a bag of dog poo, rip open the bag of dog poo, and then have a little snack.
Oh
my God.
Have some self-respect.
What?
That's awful.
That's nutritious.
Might taste
Nature.
great. I've never tried it. I don't know if it's good or not.
Oh,
I'm just saying, we don't know.
You said might taste great.
Yeah.
And I heard you saying mine tastes great. And I just thought, actually, I'm just going to gloss on and move past it because, we've got a guest.
You guys at a park is that you're trying to go through the dog poo, you're naked at a playground. It's a whole image.
James has got party blues coming out his head.
yeah. Oh my God. They do have them in New Zealand.
They do,
Magpies,
yes.
don't they? But they've come over from Australia. Apparently no one's trying to get rid of them in New Zealand. Like in New Zealand, there's quite a lot of invasive species and they're trying to get rid of them. Well, they're not doing it with magpies because it's too hard, basically.
Yeah.
You get rid of 2 magpies from an area and then the next 2 will move in. But apparently what I read is they've got a bad reputation in New Zealand, these magpies, because they're big, showy, noisy, and according to the article, it must be said, Australian.
Yes. Yeah. That really does rub us the wrong way. So I can understand that.
Did you hear of these acclimatization societies? Because
Yeah.
that was the Australian magpies, but they were introduced to New Zealand by societies saying, I'm not sure what the rationale was actually, because it was not as though they were going to be hunted or...
Well, they thought that there wasn't enough nice animals in New Zealand.
And in fact, I've heard that a lot, yeah, famously. It's not...
Well, they're like, there's not...
There's no endemic mammals to New Zealand apart from a bat. So,
Right.
like, any
But
mammals
they're
weren't
like-
really there.
They got there and they're like,
beforehand.
where's the rabbits?
Yeah.
Where's the tweeting birds? We don't know where they are. And
But I feel like it's such a bird-heavy place, or certainly would have been in the
Yes.
19th century. As in, why would you introduce more birds?
I guess
You
so.
know?
Yeah,
But-
maybe
yeah.
some that can fly would be useful.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like the
once
kakapo,
they're done-
that's a New Zealand
Yeah, but
one,
a
isn't
lot
it?
of them kind of hide in the middle
quite
of the
shy
night.
and they're quite-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even there's like the kiwi bird, I don't think I've ever seen one.
really?
You go to the zoo and they say they're in there, but I don't reckon they are. I think it's just they put a red light in a like cave-looking area and they go, there's kiwi in there.
It's like Tasmanian devils.
Yeah.
I've gone every year to see a Tasmanian devil at Taronga Zoo in Sydney, and you never see
You
one.
never see them spinning around like a tornado.
Yeah, you do hear in the background, but yeah. Stop the podcast.
Detener el podcast.
What was that?
That was very bad Spanish, Dan. And you know what? I would really like to be much better at Spanish. Can you think of any way that might possibly happen?
Unbelievably, by insane coincidence, the advert we're about to record is exactly the thing to help you, because we are sponsored this week by Babbel.
Is Babbel the amazing language learning company which lets you work online or on apps? It has everyday conversations, it has advanced speech recognition, it has lessons complemented by cultural insights.
No, it's actually courses in how to talk for way too long. I see you've been taking some classes. No, of course, that's exactly what it is. Babbel has over 200 language experts that have come together to curate the best learning tools for you to be able to become fluent in one of 14 different languages. If you're going overseas, this is the essential app to take with you or to open up on your computer while you're there.
Absolutely. And right now, Babbel is offering our listeners 6 months free with a purchase of a 6-month subscription with a promo code No Such Thing. That's all one word.
That's right. So head to Babbel, that's BABBEL.com/play. Use the promo code No Such Thing, all as one word, and you will get 6 months free with a purchase of a 6-month subscription.
Babbel is your guaranteed path towards speaking a new language. You don't have to go on all the time like I do, just talking and talking and talking. And
Okay,
speaking
yes, thank you. On with the show.
Adelante con el podcast.
Ole! Okay, it is time for fact number 2. That is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that the sport of netball was invented because its creator thought basketball made women grow bitter and lose control.
Wow. As a player of both sports, I will say this is true.
Okay, that's
I
interesting.
play social netball, and it's always very wholesome. The slogan of netball is just, here if you need. It's so beautiful. That's just what you say a lot, when you pass the ball, you go, here if you need. Like, you never pass the ball to me.
really?
You say, here if you need, like I'm over here. It's very wholesome, but then I play basketball and I become a feral beast.
Wow, it's so interesting.
So what's the key difference that causes that?
I
No
don't know
contact.
if this is...
Well, basketball is
contact or-
technically no contact.
But you're trying to take the ball off someone and you can run beside them. So basics in netball is once you catch the ball, you can't move.
Right.
If you're taking a shot, no one can defend you.
So you can't
They
even
can.
dribble.
From
you
3 feet away.
From 3 feet away, which is, I would argue, too many feet.
And you can't dribble along the court.
can't dribble.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, this all comes from a woman called Clara Bear, who was working at Newcomb College in New Orleans, and she'd been asked to come up with a new sport for women to play because this was an all-women's school. And she decided, she came up with a few ideas, but her main one was to adapt sports that were being played by men. So basketball had just become really popular, had been invented by James Naismith a few years earlier, and so she wrote to him and asked for the rules. she got the rules and said, right, we're going to play basketball. But anyone who was there said it was a mad game in which the women grew bitter and lost control. Even she herself said it was not entirely satisfactory. And so she thought, well, I'm going to have to invent a new game which doesn't have all this stuff because this is just not appropriate to women. And so she came up with netball.
Interesting. Yeah. You say that netball is a non-contact sport, but I don't think it actually is, because non-contact would be something like tennis where you genuinely don't touch anyone else. But netball, there are certain rules. So if I was to run into the space to get the ball and someone else is running in and I shoulder barge them on the way, that is completely within the rules of the game. Like there is the art of learning to play netball is to learn how to be very aggressive within the confines of the rules.
Yes.
Really.
Okay.
Yeah, we used to play it at school, and I went to I went to a Steiner school, so I think that was more. It feels like a made-up Steiner sport, really. Steiner's a very hippie, non-competitive kind of thing, and it feels like instead of basketball, let's do netball instead.
So can I check a few more rules?
Yeah.
So Mel, do these still no shouting or talking during the game? Is that still observed?
Interesting. Where is that from? Is that from the most recent rule book?
That's from Clara Bayer's founding rules of the game.
You can't talk back to the umpire, so you couldn't say, what was that?
Well, in the first
Get in
rules, for
trouble.
sure, if you spoke, if you said anything in the game, it was a foul.
Right,
wow.
even here if you need.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to say that.
I read no falling over was also a rule, which I can't. I'm struggling to compute.
That seems a bit harsh, doesn't it?
It does. But
It's a weird rule there's sort of a hangover of that. If you catch the ball and you fall over, you're not allowed to move with the ball. But if you are on the ground, you can't throw the ball from the ground.
What?
So you have to make your way back up to standing before you can throw the ball. But you have to keep your feet planted. So where your feet landed when you fell over, you have to just weirdly stand
you
up.
look like one of those inflatable car selling balloon guys.
You just have to rise up. Yeah.
That's great.
That's brilliant.
That's a good rule. I like that.
Yeah. She also said no needlessly rough play was in her rules.
Yeah.
And all shots had to be taken with one hand because there was a thought that by throwing it with two hands, it was unladylike and might somehow make women less feminine, was the idea.
Right.
I read there would be inclination of the shoulders forward with consequent flattening of the chest.
Oh,
Precisely.
And that would not be a graceful position for girls.
That's what they said. But it's interesting because the one-handed throw was in netball from the very start. They had one-handed throw. But in basketball, there was none of it until about the 1930s. It was all two-handed throwing into the baskets.
As a rule, was it?
No, it's
or
just
that was the way.
That was the way they did it, yeah.
Yeah. I love as well that she basically, she originally was starting basketball as a female version of it, and she called it basketball. She just changed it to QUE.
Well, I think what happened there is she wrote to Naismith, who came up with the original thing, and she said, here's my new sport, what do you think? It's women's basketball. And he wrote back saying, well, it's not really the same as basketball, so you should change the name a little bit.
Yeah.
And she said, okay, I'll change it to basketball.
And then part of the rules were developed because she just misunderstood what he'd sent back. There were dots all over it, and she took that to mean 7 different zones, so you would be stuck in your zone, and that got applied to the initial rules,
Which are
have
not
since
still today.
changed.
Yeah. Still, a goalkeeper is still
Okay.
in 1/3 of the court. A centre can go in most of the court, but not the two. It's very complicated.
It's not very sociable, is it? Like if there's some people who never really see each
Exactly.
other.
Like I will chat to a goal shooter as a goalkeeper a lot, but I will never see my
Exactly.
team's goal shooter. I just go, oh, well done.
But it's safe, and the women look very womanly as a result. So
What a
the
relief.
vision has remained from Clara Bear.
Do you play volleyball as well, Mel?
I don't. I just play netball and basketball. Yeah.
Because apparently volleyball may have been nicked basically a month after the first game of Newcomb Ball, which was another thing. Clara Bear invented Newcomb Ball, where you throw the ball into the other team's area so it hits the floor
Yes.
without them being able to catch it. 1 month after that first game was written up, William Morgan, the YMCA director in the USA, he invented volleyball. And it was basically, apparently, for older businessmen on their lunch hour, was how it was described, which I think it has not stayed true to over the years.
Right.
Volleyball.
You know beach volleyball?
Yeah.
There's an official rule that you're only allowed to wear one watch.
Oh, wow.
Really?
It's in the actual rules. It says only one watch
possible
allowed.
advantage do you gain from 2 watches?
What do you think?
Interesting.
You know what time it is in another part of the globe.
Yeah. Do you know the answer?
I think I do, yeah.
okay. So what advantage would you have?
I mean, you're never going to...
I have a punt.
Go on.
Is it that people were doing sponsorship deals with multiple watch companies?
I can't believe that's
interesting.
amazing.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Because there's actually some rules about how many temporary tattoos you're allowed, because people use those for advertising as well.
You've
So
got
obviously you don't have...
small real estate.
Yeah.
For sponsors, I see.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
That's so funny.
Isn't it?
Because netball is so big in New Zealand and Australia, I wasn't sure how much you guys knew about the sport. I know you play it in England. You've got a very popular team. But I was like, I wonder what some unknown facts about netball. So, of course, I looked it up and I found an article titled Fascinating Facts About Netball That You Never Knew.
Right.
Okay.
Number one was, how long is a netball game?
Okay, well, let's try. Does anyone here know how long it
Actually,
is?
I do not know. I will guess it's 80 minutes.
Oh, I think it's less. I've watched games, but I can't remember how long they were. I reckon maybe 60 minutes in quarters.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
you're-
I'm trying to work out, is it quarters as well? And so I'm going to say 60 because I heard you just say yes.
Yes, I acknowledge your answer and it's incorrect. No, it is actually. It's 4 15-minute quarters.
Nice.
Yeah,
Fascinating fact.
Yes, fascinating fact. Number two, what is netball? I think it's a real entry-level article that I had come across.
I love the way that the first thing you need to learn is how long it is, and then the second one is what it is. It's like, do you want to play netball? Well, how long will it be? 60 minutes.
It's got 2 watches on.
Well, you're right. So I grew up in Oz for my teenage years. Netball was massive there, and I assumed it was globally massive. It's an American invention, but in America, it's not really played. It's getting back now, and particularly Aussies and New Zealanders keep going over to schools to try and reintegrate it. So Ross Day is someone who went over to try and get it done, and she said one of the biggest challenges. I can't believe this is true. It must be tongue in cheek. She says one of the biggest challenges is that when we're pitching netball, is that because of our accents being
Yes.
Aussie and New Zealand, everyone thinks we're saying nipple.
Yes, I get this a lot. I will say something about netball on TV. I'll be like, oh, that was a great netball play. And it has a whole different meaning. In the comments, people are like, what are you talking about?
Wow. So someone will come up to you and say, do you want a bit of netball play? And you go, how long will it be?
Wait, quick double check. It is what you think it is. What is nipple?
That's so funny.
I like the early forms of basketball were interesting as well. I like how they first started with like a peach basket, but they didn't think to put a hole in the bottom. So like in the early games, they would have to stop the game to go retrieve the ball from the basket and like climb up a ladder.
I suppose in a way, if you have a hole, it's not always certain if the ball's gone in.
That is true.
Is that presumably
Sometimes if I shoot and it, like, because you go for the swish sound, but sometimes you could just shoot so far that it just hits the net and makes that sound anyway, and you go, oh, I'll count it.
It's like in football, there's been in soccer, there's been this thing where you have like a board next to the goal. I think it was in Queen's Park Rangers, and they scored a goal and it hit the board and then bounced straight back out again, and the goal didn't get given because
I don't understand how so it hit the board next to the.
So
It's gone into the net.
yeah, sorry, I didn't explain that very well. So you've got the goal post, and you've got the net, but then you've got an advertising board right behind the goal. And so the ball goes in, hits the advertising board, bounces straight back out again, and the referee goes, well, I didn't see it go in. And it has happened quite recently where there was a hole in the net, as in one that wasn't supposed to be there, bigger than the normal holes in the net. And the ball went in, and it went through the hole, and no one could tell whether it had gone in or not.
That's good. That's a good thing for a goalie to do when the action's happening up the other end. Is selectively saw through the net, and then you'll be fine.
Saw. Like Wile E. Coyote. Did you, when you were sort of part of the New Zealand netball scene, do you know anyone who played for the Masturbators? Do you remember this?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
it was just a cheeky little fun New Zealand thing, but there was a Sydney World Masters games where all netball teams were coming, and there was a lot of New Zealand teams that were coming over, and they named themselves the Masturbators. And
Why?
well, it was a Masters, and they were baiting. So with the Masturbators,
The second part is
They're
the...
baiting.
that was-
What are they baiting?
well, baiting the other teams.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
I didn't come up with it.
I like how the sport of netball's evolved quite a lot. There's different versions of it. There's Fast Five, which is basically made it more like basketball.
Okay.
There's 5 people on the court, and you can shoot 3-pointers or 2-pointers and things. The Northern Mystics used a new move called the Harrison Hoist, because you have to be 3 feet away, and so they have been practicing like a cheerleader lift, and so she lifted her up, and she was able to bat the ball out of the air as it was going into the hoop.
Allowed?
And yeah, it's allowed. It was in the rules
probably
of
not
the
in the
game,
rule books.
and they were going to go, oh, we'll save this for the finals, but then they were like, okay, we might not get to finals, so they had to do it in like a qualifying match.
Wow.
It's one of those things that they don't do all the time now, because in theory, if you knew it was coming, you could kind of counter it, because you could only have 2 defenders in the circle. So they had to use all of their resources. But if you didn't see it coming, you were like, oh, just a shot.
That's
and you know, and
amazing.
then suddenly she's in the sky.
So it's like a rugby throw-in, basically.
Yeah, like a
the way
line-out.
that they're lifted into the air.
You're not allowed to do that in football, by the way.
Yeah, wow.
It's in the rules, officially in the rules.
Isn't it?
As in, not
piggybacks.
If
Yeah.
you
Spoken like a true athlete.
and it's in the air and you want to head the ball in and
Yeah.
you think, well, I'm going to give my mate a piggyback, it's not allowed. It's ungentlemanly conduct, it's called. It's an indirect free kick to the other team, and both players should be cautioned.
Get out.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's unfair. I think
I
if you've
know
got the
that.
wherewithal to put together a piggyback in that time, you should be allowed to
That
do
was in my, because I trained as a football referee,
yeah.
and that was one of the questions that came up. It's like, what do you do in this situation?
it. Wow.
You give them a stern finger waggle.
I really want to watch Andy's version of football, though. So it's a corner kick. He's gone for the piggyback. It's gone in. Oh, no. Someone sawed through the back of the net, and it has gone right through. No points. Okay, it is time for fact number 3, and that is Andy.
My fact is that when the asteroid which wiped out the dinosaurs hit, there was a brief burst of radiation so strong it would have immediately cooked some dinosaurs through.
Whoa, like an air fryer.
Yes, exactly like an air fryer. This is it's much less fun than I've made it sound for the dinosaurs, but what a, for a
Fun
brief...
for, like, the mammals survived, did they? So could they have come out and eaten some dinosaur cooked?
Yes, they probably could. Yeah.
But you say for a brief moment, so it was perfectly cooked, and then they were charred beyond oblivion? Is that it? Because you could say, oh, here is my roast. For a brief moment, it was amazing, but it is a pile of ash now.
Yeah, that moment. No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of there weren't precise settings on. This is from a fantastic book I've just read. It's called Not the End of the World by Hannah Ritchie, and it's about completely different stuff, actually. It's about sustainability and the sort of big planetary challenges. But she's writing in this bit about, extinction events and how fascinating some of those have been over the past. And this is about the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. 66?
66.
A while ago.
Yeah.
And the asteroid hits.
It was an old book that you read, wasn't it?
Thing hits.
Yeah.
There's a shockwave that moves at 17,000 miles an hour. It's quite hard to get your head around some of this stuff. And then this huge amount, like cubic miles of rock, get lifted up by the impact. They've been liquidized into these little glass balls, which go all the way around the planet immediately, and then that falls. Literally, the kind of sky falls down. This,
rains glass.
Yeah, liquid rock, basically. And lots of it gets blasted by friction in the atmosphere, because it's coming back into the atmosphere, if you see.
Right.
So then the energy is released as infrared radiation, which turns into this massive blast of heat.
Crikey.
And if you're a dinosaur out in the open, it's bad news. And it's really interesting, because why didn't everything burn immediately at that point? And basically, there was a study in 2016 by a scientist called Sean Gulick who found out that either it was like being in a toaster for a few hours or a pizza oven for a few minutes. It's bad news if you were out in the open.
Okay. Wow.
So would there be some dinosaurs who were the furthest away that would be nicely cooked?
Medium rare.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they get cooked
Yeah.
by the radiation. Their innards are just they're cooked. But so they die immediately, or is it kind of like radiation where
If you were out in the open, there's a very good chance you would have died at that point, because it's such a blast of searing heat for a relatively long time, longer than you'd be comfortable with.
It's not just like a sauna.
No, it's
Okay. For a brief moment in time, their muscles were very relaxed. And,
it is nuts reading about it.
Yeah.
But, it was pretty
It
striking.
was a big old rock, wasn't it?
Big old rock. I found one weird thing. This is good. Right, so I think we've said before it was the size of Mount Everest, the rock thing.
Yeah.
And it was travelling 20 times the speed of a bullet. It was really, really huge.
Big and fast.
Big and fast. And it was so big and fast that when it arrived, it was pushing the atmosphere in front of it so rapidly that the crater from the impact started to form before it hit.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
It just pushed the surface of the Earth down.
Oh my God.
I know.
It's amazing, that, isn't it?
Yeah. It's insane. I became friends recently with the dinosaur hunter or she's a paleontologist who's the person who has verified that the asteroid landed in spring. I think you guys met her very briefly in Belgium
wow. Oh,
yeah.
when we were at Nerdland,
Yeah.
the festival. It was all to do with a specific fish that, as it was being carried in the tsunamis, which was not just water, it was also earth, like an earth tsunami. The glass that had come down went through the filters of the fish, like went through the mouth and were inside. So when they found the fossilized versions of these fish, they found the glass. And these specific fish are the type of fish that have growths in their body that change per season.
Oh, that's so handy.
During spring, yeah. So during spring, they grow these extra little things. So they spotted that and they went, well, that could only happen in spring. Therefore, in spring on the side of the planet that it's on, that's where that happened.
That is amazing.
Pretty nuts
gosh.
detective
That is
work.
nuts.
That's
Like
hard.
Yeah.
You know, you got to deal with an asteroid and hay fever at the same time. I was looking at extinct meat because a cultivated meat company in Australia made a mammoth meatball last year.
Yes,
nice.
Yes.
Heard about this, yeah.
Using a DNA sequence from the mammoth myoglobin, which is the protein that gives the meat its flavour, and filled in a few gaps using elephant DNA, and then they made this meatball. They did not eat the meatball, but they just put it on display to be like,
Why
this is a
not?
mammoth meatball. I don't know. I think they were like, we haven't really tested this, whether this is
That's
safe for human consumption. So
Oh,
we'll
really?
just make the meatball, I guess probably to get a bit of press. And
Is it the size of
display
a
it.
normal meatball? Because you think if it was a mammoth meatball, you would
True.
deliberately make it much bigger, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't get, it wasn't next to like a can of Coke, so I'm not sure. But it looked regular meatball size.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
you wouldn't, because then it would just confuse the purchaser or the person looking at it. Go, oh, I get it, it's mammoth, it's big. It's like just not even considering the extraordinary science that has gone into this.
Yeah.
I would have eaten that.
You
Would
would
you?
You would have.
Without knowing the health implications?
Yes.
It's interesting.
How interesting.
Okay, Andy's
Yeah.
put
But it's,
himself
I
forward.
feel like they've grown it. No animals have been harmed.
Yeah.
So I'm a veggie, but I would love to.
Yes,
know,
I
give it a
think
go.
the same thing because my boyfriend's vegetarian and he says that if we reach the point where we could just have cultivated meat made from the actual cells, then he'd be, oh, it's fine, I'll eat that. And I think it's come a long way in the last few years. I think the first patty they made, like a mince patty, it started just with mince patties, was I think $300,000, so quite an expensive burger. But it's come down now where they think that they could, release
To like
these sorts of things.
200,000.
Yeah. Release them into supermarkets. So it's
cool.
rapidly.
Yeah.
I experiment quite a lot with those. I tried some salmon the other day, which I have to say was not there.
Oh,
No, you
yes,
mean
like
the
the fake
fake stuff.
salmon,
Oh, fake
not,
stuff
not
to
the
do,
like
but the-
made from actual.
Oh, no, they haven't. Sorry, yeah.
Got it on
They-
there.
I think they just keep adding salt until it has some kind of flavour, and then it's fine.
I had a vegan Domino's pepperoni pizza a couple of nights ago. That's not an ad. And I could not taste the difference.
Really?
Genuinely could not taste
I
the
will
difference.
just say for the listeners at home, he does have a Domino's tattoo on his neck that he's trying to show off.
And he's wearing two watches, one of which seems to be a Domino's pizza.
Yeah, what's that? Oh, pizza time.
Can I ask, did it have cheese on it?
It did. Well, no, but it had vegan
It
cheese.
has vegan cheese on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's a vegan pizza. Yeah.
They used to have a vegan pizza express. Seeing as we're talking about pizzas now, they used to have a vegan pizza express down the road from here, which only sold vegan pizzas, and it was the most disgusting thing. The cheese, like they just couldn't do good vegan cheese. Maybe they can now.
It's all about the mouthfeel. That's the
Sure.
and the stretch.
That's your Tinder bio. isn't it?
The mouthfeel in the stretch.
I found an essay in a scientific journal called Evolution, Education and Outreach, and it asked which items a Jewish time traveller would be able to eat because they were kosher or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you guess the headline of this article? 50 points to anyone who does.
Oh.
Is gettable.
Oh, is it a pun? Back to the jucha.
It's not that.
Nice.
So it's about the food. It's about the food that you might be eating.
Yeah.
What's
Is it to do with time travel?
It's to do with a very famous dinosaur-based franchise.
I don't think Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
Oh, beautiful.
Jurassic Park.
Beautiful.
And it was. That's a good headline.
Yeah, that's good.
And it was about what basically a Jewish time traveler who wanted to eat contemporaneous food would be allowed to eat, and basically very few dinosaurs are kosher, it turns out.
Oh.
Some of them are birds, but even the bird ones lack the sort of toe that you have to, if you're allowed to eat particular meats that are kosher, it's because they're like chicken, they've got a particular opposable toe, I think.
Right.
Mice are not allowed, that's probably not relevant now.
So sorry, Jurassic pork.
They actually just went with Jurassic.
They just went with Jurassic?
Yeah.
What, Jurassic pork?
I think they were correct in that. I think Jurassic Pork is...
It's sitting there.
I guess
I'd write a
so.
complaints letter. We said earlier 65, 66 million years ago with the extinction of the dinosaurs.
Sure.
But do you know how long ago that is in a galactic year?
Ooh.
I'd never heard of a galactic year before.
That must be something to do with the traveling through the galaxy.
Yeah, it's
so
our-
not...
How long it takes the galaxy to go around once?
Exactly.
I think it's 3
Yeah.
years ago in galaxy years.
Galactic year is 225 million years,
Uh-oh.
roughly.
Factor of 10.
Yeah.
Incorrect. Really?
So the dinosaurs were here 3.5 months ago
Oh, wow.
in a galactic
So the
year.
dinosaurs were on Earth, but if you had a time machine, like what does Doctor Who have? It's like a
TARDIS.
TARDIS, yeah. You go into the TARDIS and you come back exactly in the same position in space,
Yeah.
but different time. The Earth won't be here anymore.
Yeah, we'll be further in space somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to...
And if Dr. Jew was going through... Sorry, I was just trying to appeal.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, it is time for our final fact of the show, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that in the 1980s, you could download video games over the radio.
What?
Okay,
Cool.
wow.
Yeah.
What?
To a certain generation, that's going to be like, there used to be a thing called MySpace. Right? Have you heard of DVDs?
I was alive in the 1980s and I never heard that.
Yeah, no, I didn't think of this either. This was the very early days of computers, whereby hard drives were incredibly expensive. So they used to have an audio cassette, like you would in a stereo. You could put a cassette in, and that's where you would keep all the data of programs that you were loading up. So someone made the connection that actually, if you're able to record onto a cassette, you should be able to transfer multiple different kinds of data over the radio. And why not video games? So what people used to do is they used to tune in to radio shows that basically just played data over the waves.
Yeah.
You'd put your cassette in and you would press record, and then you take it out, put it in your computer, and there's your video game.
So these were dedicated radio stations. It wasn't like that was Talking Heads. Now time for Tetris. It's amazing. So what did the audio sound like?
Well,
was it just...
for people probably older than you but younger than me, it would sound like, when you had dial-up internet,
Ah, yes.
and you would, or if a fax came through on a phone line, it's just like,
that it's exactly that.
and the computer just takes that, and if it's a high sound, it's a 1, and if it's a low sound, it's a 0, and it just turns it into zeros and ones and makes games out of it.
Yeah, and to be fair, that could be confused as a very popular type of
Yes, exactly.
techno.
The 80s, yeah, that's true.
So this was done for ages, and then suddenly, obviously, modern technology and prices, the equivalent of the Mammoth burger coming down from 300,000, they suddenly were able to afford to have hard drives and computers, and so it slowly got wiped out. But that was a thing that happened. It's bizarre to think that that you could take a video game, Grand Theft Auto, by just listening to the radio
very
and
weird.
recording it.
I'm not used to the idea that data could be transmitted in ways that we can hear and understand.
It's
if you know
so
what I mean?
strange.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And obviously data could be transmitted in ways we can hear and understand because I'm talking to you all and
Yeah.
I understand. But yeah.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
And there was weird things that were done using this kind of novelty, I guess it was. Radio West. Do you ever hear of Radio West, James?
No.
I think it's BBC, and they just call it Radio West. So it's sort of, you get your local BBC in an area. There used to be a host who was called... what was he called? Sorry, hang on a sec. There used to be a host called Joe Tozzer who used to work for...
How did you forget that name?
And at number 6 this week, Joe Tozzer and the Masturbators.
That's so funny. Sorry, Joe, if you're listening.
But also, how was school? Was that was a rough ride?
How do you spell it? Is it
It could be Tozer.
Tozer? Yeah, like
I'm sure he says Tozer.
as in Faye Tozer from Steps. Her surname. is
Okay,
Tozer.
so-
We're piecing it together. It's definitely a different name.
Tozer.
Oh, yeah, Tozer.
Yeah.
You went with Tozer.
Sorry, Joe. But yeah, so he once broadcast the data sounds of what ended up being a pixel image of one of Charlie's angels. So the star, Cheryl Ladd.
gosh.
So you recorded it down, put it into your computer, and slowly it pixelated together 40 by 80 pixels of the star.
40 by 80.
40 by 80.
Sexy resolution.
It is.
Is that a boob or a head? Not clear.
And of course, you could do it with anything. You could do it with vinyl as well. And there was some computer game magazines that would put little vinyls on front of the magazine, and it
So
would just
cool.
play this noise, which your computer then would recognize as zeros and ones and would turn into a game. And it's all because you didn't have enough memory on your computer.
It's exactly that, yeah.
So your memory had to be on your cassette.
Yeah.
What are the limitations of it now? So in theory, could we
Yeah, good
do it
question.
for a more complex game than Tetris or
You
Pong?
could,
or...
for sure.
Yeah.
I reckon. But the problem is, because I used to have one of these computers with the cassettes on, it would take about 30 minutes to load any game onto your computer.
Okay.
And they were all really shit games.
Yeah,
Like, as in,
yeah.
they were fun, but there was the graphics were terrible and whatever. And often you would get to the end of the 30 minutes and one of its zeros or ones would have been read wrong and the whole thing would be knackered and you'd have to start again.
Wow.
And so if you wanted to put like Grand Theft Auto onto it, you'd probably have to make it play for about 40 years.
Yeah, okay.
That'd be
all
great to
right.
know, because the
Yeah.
games are so massive these days. Mel, you're a gamer, aren't you?
I'm a little bit of a gamer, yes.
Yeah.
Can you get Baldur's Gate 3 in audio form?
They did end
Yeah.
up releasing very specific audio blank cassettes that you could get called Basic Code.
Okay.
It would guarantee compatibility with your computer, as opposed to, I imagine there were a few audio cassettes out there that didn't quite do it. And so yeah, you would tune into either like Datorama or Hobby Scoop, which were specific radio stations that
cool.
just
Amazing.
broadcast.
It's
But
really
you can just put on Radio 4 and listen to the shipping forecast and make that into your own game, I find. You know.
Yes.
We used to do this as kids, actually, and we would have to guess whether it was rising slowly or, I don't know if it's the pressure or something. They go, Dogger 75, rising slowly.
Yeah.
Right.
We had to guess what it was going to be.
That's good.
Who's
That's a good
who's
game.
the host of the shipping forecast?
I don't think it's got a host per se.
well,
It's just
the
someone-
person who reads.
I don't know.
I
She's
can't remember. I think it's been the same person for about 40 years.
She's very
isn't it?
famous. Yeah, she's married, I think, to Claire Balding. I was on a show with her once, and I was asked, "Do you want to have any questions for her about the shipping forecast?" I didn't know what to ask because I'd never heard it. So I said, "What's your favorite ship?"
That's a good question.
It's a good question. Did she have an answer?
No, she was like, "You haven't heard my show, have you?" And I said, "No, I haven't."
Rude.
And she said, "What's your favourite fish?"
Yeah.
Did you hear of the game Great Britain Limited? I was looking at some early Spectrum games.
No.
In Great Britain Limited, it was a government simulation where you managed the British economy. And
I love it.
Wow.
There's no way to win.
Yeah.
it was
Did
very
they give Liz
difficult.
Truss a go at it?
This is easy.
You would like change little things, and then the inflation would go up, or the unemployment would go down, or vice versa. And then every 5 years, you would have an election, and depending on how well you've done, you'd say you've been kicked out, or you've got another 5 years.
Wow.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's really good.
good
What was
idea.
that? Was the
80s, yeah, early 80s.
Wow, and it was government made.
No, it was just.
okay.
A lot of these games in the 80s, they were just made by kids in the
'Cause you
bedrooms.
could,
Yeah,
really, like,
which was mad. I went over to the home of a writer friend of my other friends, and she was like, "I want you to meet him. He's really cool." We went over, and he just pulled out a whole archive of cassettes of games he invented, and yeah, and that was the first time I ever learned that games could be put on an audio cassette. It was
good
just
time for creativity, but just in a very shitty medium.
Much like the podcast. Do you have any really weird games, Mel?
Do I have any weird games? At one point, because I have quite an addictive personality when it comes to games, there is a very stupid game on Steam called Cookie Clicker. And it's literally a cookie, and you just click it and you get another cookie.
Oh, right.
But then you keep clicking, and then you can buy like, a cafe that makes cookies. So you just, it's basic. I feel like it feeds the endorphins in your brain because you just like keep clicking, and then you can buy like an automatic clicker with the cookies, and then it will automatically click it for you, and then you can buy a factory of cookies, and you keep, and it's.
But you have to keep clicking.
But you could leave it for like an hour because you've run an automated system, and then you come back and you're like, I've got 4 billion cookies, and it just feeds the endorphins in your brain because you're like, I'm getting better at this game.
Do you say it was on Steam?
Simple. It's on Steam. A lot of it.
What is Steam?
Steam is just.
Damn, that's so embarrassing.
But just for the other people who don't know what it is.
For those idiots listening at home. No, just kidding. Steam is just a game library, essentially.
Cool.
So it's if you're on a PC, you can download games, and almost all games, unless they're like console exclusive, will be on Steam that you can download.
And a console?
I take it you guys aren't gamers.
I've actually got Steam.
You have got Steam.
You are
What
a bit
games
of a
do you
gamer.
play?
Don't play many games on it.
No, really.
I play Fortnite, all right? I play Fortnite against 8-year-olds around the world, and I lose.
I tried Fortnite and I was just too embarrassed to continue because the skill cap of that game is so high, and these 14-year-olds that have been playing since they were 9 are just so good that you couldn't possibly just start a game now and be anywhere near as good as them. So it's just,
it's true.
You know.
If I put myself in the mind of a 14-year-old playing this game, would it be immediately obvious which one Andy was?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
I'm the guy hiding in one of the buildings, just trying to have a nice afternoon. There's a cookie. I'm trying to click on that. Yeah.
He's soaring out the back of a net, trying to escape.
Here's a fact about the guy who invented video games, arguably.
Yeah.
And it's sent in by a listener. This is sent in by Grant Wynne Jones, who sent in the fact that nuclear bombs and video games were created by the same guy.
Yeah, that's actually a deleted scene from Oppenheimer.
Yeah. Well, it's not Oppenheimer, but it's a guy called William Higginbotham, great name, who did invent the first screen-based video game. It was called Tennis for Two, and it was in 1958.
Sounds like Pong, right?
It's pretty pongy.
Yeah.
It's like 2D tennis. There was nothing to play it on, so you had to play it on an oscilloscope, which is a device to measure voltage waves. And that because there were no consoles, no screens, nothing. And he also worked on the Manhattan Project, and he was in charge of the team which made the electronic triggers for the first nuclear bombs. So that's a fact. It stacks up.
That's great.
And he played the accordion as well. And his daughter wrote a memoir about him called Accordion to Willie, which is...
While we're talking about sort of like the founding figures of video gaming, one person who's known as the father of the video games industry, and I believe this is the person who kind of took it away from PC and said, the television, why are we not getting it on the television, was an engineer and inventor, and his name was Ralph Baer.
Oh,
now can you
spelled
think of...
the same as Clara?
Yes.
Wow.
And it turns out that they are... No, they're not. I couldn't find any relation. I was so excited when I saw the connection name, but no.
That's so funny.
Nothing. Yeah.
Last game that I played to any regularity was Mario Kart
Oh,
N64. And there's a really nice economic theory that the world should be like Mario Kart.
Okay, I can kind of see what you mean.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you're in the front in a game of Mario Kart, your power-ups are less powerful.
Yes.
So if you're first, you will get like maybe a banana peel to throw behind you, which, But then if you're last, you will get a power-up that's like turns you into a torpedo.
The giant bullet guy.
Giant bullet guy that can go to the top. Or the blue shell, which automatically wipes out the person in first. So I guess
killer,
in the sense that it kind of evens things out in society a little more.
So it's like reverse Ayn Rand, basically.
Yeah.
And it's known as rubber banding. And the idea is that anyone at the back of society gets a huge boost, and it helps everyone in society, especially as those people at the bottom tend to be like farmers or, people who are helping at the base of everything.
Right.
And apparently that would be a great way of doing it, apart from good luck finding anyone to vote for it.
That's really interesting.
It's a lovely idea.
I like that theory.
Yeah.
In 2004, someone made a device that is a Game Boy, And the Game Boy is also attached to kind of a thing that goes over your mouth, which gives you nitrous oxide and basically makes you pass out. And this was for children.
To stop them playing?
No, not to stop them playing.
But as in you have enough nitrous, you do well enough of the game, you pass out, you stop playing the Game Boy?
No, it's not that. Any other thoughts why you might do this? It's for children.
It's for children.
Make children pass out.
So if they're going into surgery and they need to...
Oh my
Absolutely,
gosh.
got it in one, Dan. Yeah.
Good.
So the idea is it's hard to give kids anesthesia and keep them calm while you're doing it.
Yeah.
If you give them a Game Boy to play, then they're distracted and they get the anesthesia.
That's
And
great.
it was designed but
Never used.
never used.
implemented.
No.
Well, it's unfair on children who are not good at video. Like, I'm not very good at video games, so I would still be on lying there hours later. Surgeon's ready to go home. Night has fallen.
It's just the tutorial. Come on.
Okay, that's it. That is all of our facts. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in contact with any of us about the things that we've said over the course of this podcast, we can all be found on various social media accounts. I'm on Instagram on @Schreiberland. Andy.
At Andrew Hunter M.
James.
At James Harkin.
And Mel.
At Melanie Bracewell.
Nice. Or you can get to our group account on Twitter by going to @NoSuchThing, or you can email us at podcast@qi.com. And if you want to just hear all of the episodes and find out about our secret membership club, which is called Club Fish, you can go to nosuchthingasafish.com and you can find all of our previous episodes there, as well as the doors to the secret members club. Mel, you're on tour right now in the UK.
Yes, touring around the UK, and then I'll be touring Australia, and then I'm coming back for Edinburgh in August. So
Amazing.
I'm hopping around.
How do we find dates?
MelanieBracewell.com/gigs, I think. Yes.
Okay, that's it. We'll be back again next week, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.